Aya! Welcome! I'm back with another edition of Minidisc Monday today, and today we're going to look at one of my favourite albums, possibly of all time I think, certainly one of my favourite 1990s albums, and it's the only one that was ever released by this group on Minidisc. I'm of course talking about So Tough by the synth pop trio Saint Etienne. So this album was their second studio release, a year or so, maybe coming up for 2 years after the debut Fox Bass Alpha. It was the first album where Sarah Cracknell, the vocalist, was considered a permanent member of the group. She was the regular singer on this, although there is other vocalists on this album as well. Now weirdly, with the vast majority of my mini discs, I can't remember the price I paid, and I'm sometimes a little unsure as to whether I got it from Discogs or eBay. It's going to be one or the other for me. But this, I always remember, this sticks in my mind where I got it from and how much it cost. I know that it was an eBay Buy It Now purchase quite some years ago, and it cost me £60, which yes, is a lot of money for an album. Although that's not far off the current Discogs median value of this, to be honest, as you'll have seen on the clip earlier on. The cover there, that is I think 6 or 7 year old Sarah Cracknell, a photo taken by her father I believe. A very sort of plain and minimal back to the case there. But we'll have a look at this before we drill down into the tracks. But I've been so looking forward to listening to this album again, and I've just finished listening to it now. So the artwork there, and then you turn it over and then you have to turn it sideways on kind of, for no track listing but a little bit of copyright and legal bump. Manufactured in DADC Austria, which was basically Sony's Minidisc pressing plant back in the 90s. On the Heavenly label, there's also a Creation Records credit on here. Copyright Creation Records Limited 1993 there. Creation may have had something to do with the UK distribution, I'm not honestly sure. To show you the booklets, what there is of it. Very plain and minimal, but there's a nice little essay about Saint Etienne there from Kevin Pierce, and then some credits. So a very simple proposition, but I love this album so much. I did a Saint Etienne albums ranking, about a year and a half ago, and this was number one. Yeah, I've got a fondness for it, especially compared to all the other albums of Saint Etienne's that I've got, because I'm a big fan and collector of them, because it's on Minidisc. But I do legitimately feel this is their strongest album throughout a lot of superb work they've put out over the years and are still putting out to this day. So we'll go through it. So Tough was meant to be apparently like a concept album really, which starts in a London cafe and then travels all around the world. But apparently when they tried to use a lot of American movie samples, sort of lines of dialogue for this, they weren't cleared, so they just tended to use stuff from British films and documentaries. So that's what makes this album quite interesting, is the interludes of the audio samples from British films, documentaries, TV programmes. Just gives it a real kind of London fly on the wall feel for this album, and I'm not normally a fan of non-musical interludes between songs on albums, but for this it does really work. So starts with a brilliant track, one of my favourites on the album, Mario's Cafe. Then we go to Railway Jam, another fantastic song. Sarah Cracknell's vocals throughout this album. She's just got that kind of lilting and light voice that it's a relaxant. It doesn't get old or annoying. Track 3, if you can call it a track, but it's classed as one here. Some of the samples that they use on this album are kind of added before or after tracks, so they're not credited on their own. But this one, Date with Spellman, is credited by itself as track number 3. It's 18 seconds long. Calico is track 4. I think that features a different vocalist, or a vocalist alongside Sarah here. Yeah, QT, who was like a British female rapper, I think. She featured on other Saint Etienne stuff prior, and possibly subsequently as well. And track 5 was the first single taken from So Tough, Avenue. This one is a 7-minute 40 version. Wonderful song. Track 6 is the best known single on the album, and one of Saint Etienne's best selling singles of all time. It was unlucky not to get the top 10, I think it was number 12, You're in a Bad Way. The album version is markedly different to the single mix. The single mix is better produced, I will admit, but it's still got that charming sort of 60s pop sound to it on the album. It's not a bad version, I just prefer the single version myself. Another sample from somewhere or other is Memo to Pricey, 23 seconds long. And then my favourite on the entire album, and I think still, with the arguable exception of the Motivate remix of He's on the Phone, this could be my favourite Saint Etienne song of all time, Hobart Paving. Wow, it is so beautiful. Sarah's voice just is wonderful. I'm trying to think of more superlatives really to describe it, but if you've never heard Hobart Paving, and that came out as a single, a double A side with their cover of Who Do You Think You Are, another brilliant track, a great cover, but that isn't on this album. I believe it may feature on subsequent reissues as like a bonus track. Hobart Paving is absolutely outstanding, I really love it. Track number 9, Leaf Hound. Number 10 is another spoken word sample from somewhere, Clock Milk. Number 11, wonderful track. It's kind of got a sort of hip-hop beat to it, Conchita Martinez, and it also samples a song from the Canadian rockers Rush. It's kind of a jack of all trades, that, but it's another one of my favourites from this album. It's a really strong album. There's not a bad song on it. I don't want to say there's not a bad track on it, because some of the tracks are just a few seconds of someone talking out of a TV programme or a film. And that's the joy of Saint Etienne. I've classed them as kind of like a synth pop group, and I think that's mainly true, but you know, they will dip their toe into other genres. You know, like I say, You're in a Bad Way sounds more 60s than most of the 60s stuff I've ever heard. And they just make everything sound sort of British, even when they're using hip-hop style drum beats of the time and loops and things like that. Track 12, No Rainbows for Me. Track 13 is another sample, Here Comes Clown Feet. Track 14, the last proper song on the album, the excellent Junk the Morgue. And it ends with what sounds like another cafe scene where someone orders chicken soup. Quite weird really to have these sort of little snippets, but as I said before, it kind of gives a sort of fly on the wall documentary sort of feel to this album. This is obviously a massive recommendation from me. I think it did get a deluxe reissue quite recently in the last year or so. I don't double up on Saint Etienne, so I've only got the mini-disc. But I do urge people to get this album on whatever format they wish. My favourite Saint Etienne album, one of my favourites certainly of the 90s and possibly of all time, it's So Tough. That's Minidisc Monday number 24 done for you today. Thank you all for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and special thanks go to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm going to go now, and please will you join me again in a fortnight's time for the next instalment of this series, Minidisc Monday. Cheers everyone. See ya!